All right, here we are. I'm JB, and this is EBW 2020, and I'm with my new friend, Louise Guido, who the first time I met, I looked down at my watch, thought we had, spent 30 minutes together, and it had been like 4 hours.
Exactly.
Figuring out what's going on in the world, right? And we'll dig right into it. Your company, among many, many things you've done, Change Corp, was so eye-opening to me when you started to really break down what it's like to try to get information in the hands of women around the world. And you have become an expert of developing countries and getting information to them. Start out with that, like how we take it for granted here. Here in the U.S., information is at your fingertips, anything you want, more than you want to know.
Absolutely.
Right? But for so many people, getting access to information is really difficult. And it starts with a mobile device.
Right.
And that's what you figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you teach, I wasn't a teacher, but when you teach people a curriculum or some bit of information, it's a process, right? You go through a step-by-step process. But what happens is that you really don't know what happens afterward because the training is over, they go away, you go away, and you hope for the best. You hope that they retain something. But also you can only reach so many people at the same time. So what we figured out is that if we were going to have impact, it's great to have 200 people or 200 women or 2,000, but how can you have like 2 million or 2 billion? How does that work? And how can you do it for a really efficient way? And people that are in the same kind of demographic base, like what's the same kind of person that wants to get that information? So, I was not a technology person. I mean, I had an internet company, but mobile is different than the internet. A lot of people think it's all one thing. And what mobile is super, super personal. But here's the misperception about the emerging markets. People think that people don't have phones. We sit here in New York or in Austin or, in Dallas, Texas or wherever, and we think, we all have a phone. We look at our phone 25,000 times a day. I'm completely addicted to it. I go to sleep with it. It's like the thing I sleep with, which is sad in itself. And I think to myself, okay. But there are people that the phone is the only thing they use. They don't use a computer. They don't go home and go, oh yeah, I'm going to get on the internet later and, access. So we figured if you're going to impact people's lives and you're going to give them a step-by-step process, that you have to do it in a way that A, they have access to it, a phone, B, they understand how you get the information, and C, let's hope what they can do with it and you keep in touch with them.
And, you really broke down something for me before too, and that's understanding data plans. I have a 14-year-old who just fine, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you just use 200 meg, and we don't think anything of it.
Exactly.
But in these emerging markets where the people are dying for information, it's just not so simple.
Right, yeah.
It costs a lot.
It costs a lot. I mean, here's the misperception, and I don't know if anybody can remember this, but way back when we first got our mobile phones, you had a data plan. Sprint or AT&T, whoever, gave you so much data for so much money a month. Now, you really didn't know what that meant because all you were doing was making a phone call or doing texting. So what happens in emerging markets, even with a feature phone, which means you can access the internet, or a smartphone, you basically prepaid how much data you want every month. Prepaid means I give the telecom operator, the AT&T or the Verizon of that country, I give them $100 a month, $50 a month, and that entitles me to so much data to download. It's like a debit card. What we have in this country, is really most of us have, is a postpaid card. We use the phone, happy, 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 we have an unlimited plan, and then we get the bill at the end of the month and we pay it. Well, in 99% of the world, 90%, whatever, it doesn't work like that. Even in the more developed emerging markets, it's a data plan. So every single time they go on the internet, that pulls data, and that data means so much in megabytes, in gigabytes, whatever it is. And so people are very thoughtful about how many times they go on the internet, because every time they click the button, it costs them money. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And then you also, because of this problem, you've worked with some very heavy hitters, which you can decide to share or not share with us, of how do we build a platform where, okay, this is free. We'll work with all the telecom operators, and here are certain bits of information you can access without using up all your data plan.
Right, so here's what happens. We go on the internet on our phone, or we download an app, and maybe an app costs us $1, maybe it costs us nothing. In a lot of these emerging markets, again, they decide they want to get information. But if they decide that there's an app they want, it tends to cost them money. If there's a text message series, like a content channel that you receive it via text messages, that costs you money. Almost every single piece of data in emerging markets costs you money, meaning that you have to pay extra. You have to subscribe. But what Facebook did a couple of years ago is they came up with a thing called internet.org. And the best way to describe internet.org is that it's a portal. It's a portal of content, or essentially websites that you access via your mobile phone. And when you download the portal called internet.org, or it's now known as Free Basics, inside that are content channels or websites that you can access for free. In other words, when you click the button, there's no data cost. You don't get charged any data. So you can surf inside that internet.org portal and go crazy and get information on, there's Wikipedias in there, information on health, financial services, legal rights, and that's where we became a partner of Facebook's, where our content channels, which provide information for people, are able to access for free. And we loved it. Now, we don't make any money on it at this point, but the fact is we went from having, 5,000 users in the Middle East to having over 1 million in about 3 months.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
I know, because so of these apps that have been determined to be free, no data use, there's roughly 10 of them.
Well, there's actually more of them. There's 10 what they call global content partners, and we're one of those 10 global
but
content
you have
partners.
like 4 channels.
Right, we have 4
of
channels
that
on
10.
there. Yeah, we're a little.
How did that
yeah.
happen?
It happened because we did something very unique. And this is again a little tricky for most people to understand, but we're used to downloading an app that everybody can use. It doesn't matter where you live, but we all use it, whether it's Snapchat, whether you live in the UK or the States, you use it. And it's in a language that we understand. Well, in most markets, people really don't have access to apps that are in their local language, but more importantly, their cultural context. So if I'm going to teach you how to start a business in South Africa, it has to be in your local language, which happens to be English, or in Pakistan, it has to be in Urdu. But how do we then make that content, that same product, Smart Business, learning how to start a business, in South Africa and make it the same way in Pakistan? Well, you have to do it by language and then what we call cultural context. In other words, starting a business, the fundamentals is pretty much the same everywhere in the world, right? However, there are certain things that are different in South Africa than are in Pakistan, and we change that. We make those changes, and that's what Facebook liked about us, that we were able to scale a product, but then localize it at the same time. And very few content providers, that's what we're called, can actually do that.
And see, here we are, the rest of us, we think, oh, there's all the geniuses at Facebook or Google or whatever, and yet they're reaching out everywhere to find people like you who figured things out for them.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
flattering, right?
It is very flattering, and they don't really dress all that well. These engineers are engineers. They don't think in terms of content. And so my background was the magazine publishing business, and in the magazine publishing business, every different magazine has a different demographic profile. So, okay, those are men, 25 to 54, and so you try to fit the publication or the content based on the user demographic. In mobile, we think everybody's the same. You and I could play Angry Birds. They don't look at you as some good-looking middle-aged guy, and me, a very good-looking, well-to-do, sort of on the young side woman. We don't differentiate. But in different markets, we wanted to differentiate because people understand and accept knowledge based on relevant content, not content that is generic, but really relevant to their needs.
I'm curious, Louise, since you are an expert in the mobile space, which changes every day. I don't know how you keep up with it, first of all. Is there anything on the horizon where we're just going to be mind blown?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's going to sound like, well, that's not such a big deal, but it will be a big deal. So right now we have different types of mobile apps, right? We have sort of social media apps, which you would call Facebook or Twitter, or even Snapchat or Instagram. And then we have messaging apps, right? So we have WhatsApp and we have Facebook Messenger. Well, everything is moving towards Messenger. People want to communicate. It's great to get content. We're content people. But at the end of the day, they really want community. And what messaging does is really builds community. And you're building this sort of communication tool. And what that means is that, for example, on Facebook Messenger, you're going to have the ability to not only communicate with groups and the people you already contact with, but also maybe communicate with the store, the retail store, online retail store that you bought something from. It'll all be filtered and funneled through messaging. And it's unbelievable because what's really funny about, I think, the internet and mobile is that made us all experts in something, or experts in nothing. But at the end of the day, the core thing is that people want to communicate with each other, and particularly in emerging markets. I'll give you an example. East Africa consists of, Kenya, Tanzania, and some other countries. Well, the guy sitting in Kenya, or the woman sitting in Kenya, it's okay to communicate with the other women in Kenya, but she really wants to communicate with people in Tanzania and maybe even in Ghana or Uganda. And, people of their similar cultural influences, and maybe the States or Europe, but it really becomes that, and that's where messaging, I think, will take a huge part. That's my little theory, but it's not a theory. It's happening right now.
Wow. That's very cool. And over the past few days, I've overheard conversations where you've said to somebody else as part of EBW 2020, going, I can help with that. I'm going to do that. I've heard you commit to helping at least half a dozen women with their mobile platforms. Where do you find this bandwidth?
I just think that, it's not a mystery. If you decide tomorrow you want to start a mobile app, you have some idea and you think it would be really super cool, to try to find the guys or the gals that actually create a mobile apps is a nightmare. It's like a little cult that they have all on their own. They keep it a mystery, it's like a mystery. It's like Oz, don't pay attention to that man behind the curtain. And so for us, we're like, okay, don't even bother going down that path. That is like a complete waste of time. We've done everything. The thing that makes us super unique that I get excited about is that we're the anti of everything that's mobile. We're not young, we're not innovative, we're not any of those things. But basically what we can do is that what we're doing is saying, hey, I think that what we can provide is the direct solution that nobody else can provide. So for example, we do mobile on every platform. Text, we can deliver our content text, we can deliver it on a mobile web app, and we can deliver it on a smartphone app, which is super cool. Everybody either focuses on the smartphone app. Well, okay, yeah, it's cool. It's super cool, but it's also expensive because you have to develop different platforms, Android and iOS. And nobody produces, BlackBerry apps anymore, or even Windows apps, I'm afraid. So we want to help people not go through the pain that we went through.
You vetted it all out for them.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's not a mystery, but you have to be, you really have to know your stuff.
Okay. So one of the things to watch for in your role with EBW 2020 is not just getting information out here, is getting it out to the rest of the world in a way that they can consume it on their mobile devices, in their language.
In their language.
We're going to get there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're already there.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank
Louise
you.
Guido, Change Corp, if you want more information. Very
Thank
cool.
you, my friend.